why is going to a Hindu temple so intimidating and scary? It's weird, but I've realized I'm not the only one who has this experience. In fact, it's very common for new Hindus or people exploring Hinduism for the first time, people who have not grown up with, oh gosh, good thing today's hair washing day, it's greasy, who have not grown up going to temple. It's really scary. And when I stop and think about it, that's so weird. But of course, because I'm me, I have opinions, I have thoughts. I think that it's a little bit, I think that it's a little bit frightening because we hype ourselves up. Like, even if you didn't grow up doing Christianity, going to church, it's still so much in the Western culture, like really baked into it, that you still feel pretty comfortable showing up at a church service. You know more or less kind of what to expect. And churches, because they have that proselytizing, converting element, they are really practiced at knowing how to welcome people in. So you go in the door and there's an usher there. They tell you exactly where to sit. They hand you a printed program that says this is exactly what's happening. You just follow along. After the service, they usually have like a meet and greet. There's snacks and you meet people, and they might even have a welcome committee and maybe a welcome packet. Like, it is over the top. They know how to let people feel comfortable being there. Not always, because I did actually go to a Catholic church a couple years ago, and it was not very welcoming at all. If you watched my last video, you know I'm struggling with my weight gain and finding clothes that fit. So I think my outfit was a tad not modest enough, and I got some looks definitely not welcoming. But usually I find that Christian churches are pretty easy to kind of blend in and just show up. And that's another thing, blending in. Like, it's so much easier going to a religious service where you know that you're not going to stand out and be like, everybody's gonna be looking at you and wondering, what are you doing there? So if you're a white person or a black person, going to a church is a lot less intimidating, because even if it's not a tradition that you're very familiar with, when you walk in the door, you're probably gonna look like you belong. Depending on what service you go to. Gosh darn it, this is driving me crazy, all this stuff with my hair. So distracting. And you know, like in college I went to some Baptist churches. Obviously I stood out there, so you know, depending on what tradition you're going to, you can be certain whether or not you're going to look like you belong. But the realization that I had with going to Hindu temples is we tend to think like, oh no, it's gonna look like we're invading their space, and we're gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna look foolish, and we're gonna offend somebody, we're gonna do something wrong, we're gonna step in the wrong direction. And knowing that everybody's looking at you builds up to that, because you're in your mind going, oh, they're thinking I don't belong here, what am I doing here, why am I here, they don't want me here. And it gets built up into this huge thing, when usually people are just, you know, genuinely curious, and totally in a fair way, not in a judgmental way, just like, I wonder what brought this person to a Hindu temple. And it's not a negative thing. And I have never encountered anybody having negative feelings about me going to a temple. So I realized at some point that this was all in my head. I was the one being unwelcoming to myself. It is not that Hindu temples are unwelcoming or that the people at the temples are unwelcoming. It's me. It's I am projecting all of this stuff onto them and assuming what they are thinking, and that has never been the case. So my belief is that Hindus are extremely welcoming, happy to have you come to the temple. They just have no experience in expressing that unlike, as we said earlier, Christian churches, it's so rare for Hindus to be welcoming a non-Hindu or somebody that they perceive as potentially not a Hindu, somebody that doesn't look Hindu, somebody who's not as familiar with what to do into the temples, that they don't know how to help, but they want to help. They really want to help. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's so many varied traditions all around India that there's plenty of Indian Hindus going into a temple and not really knowing the expectations, rituals, and stuff of that particular temple. So that's also a thing. So I have a few suggestions. First is festival days are a great time to get started with going to a temple, with becoming involved in a temple community, because there's kind of more of an atmosphere of like expecting a bunch of people they don't see very often. It's a little bit easier to dip your toes in with a festival, especially a big festival, and there's plenty of them. So look up if on the temple website for any temples that are near-ish to you. Look up if they're doing something for Krishna Janmashtami, which is in August. Ganesh Chaturthi is usually August or September. Diwali, of course, Navratri, like Holi if it's the spring. See what they're doing for upcoming festivals and see if you can just start with going to that and getting to know some people. Another thing that you can do is reach out to somebody from the temple through the website and say, I'm new to the area, or I'm new to Hinduism and I would like to come to the temple, but I'm nervous. Is there somebody that can give me a tour? Something like that. People want to help. They are so eager to help. It's wonderful. So they'll be happy to show you around, tell you what each deity is, give you a history lesson about absolutely everything. And that leads me to my last point, which is the more humble that you can be, the easier it will be for you. And I struggle with this a lot because I have been identified and practicing as a Hindu for nearly 20 years now. So it's really hard for me to approach going to a new temple in a humble way because I already know all this stuff and people are so eager to be like, look, this is Rama, this is Shiva. I know. So I have to curb that and not be obnoxious and like, I already know that, and just like appreciate that they are welcoming me, that they are trying to help me, that they are educating me, and the ego has to be tamped down, which is tough. But there's always more to learn, so why not? You listen and you appreciate and you tell them thank you, and they help you to get acclimated to that temple and that temple's culture. Something that can also be a little bit tricky is that there aren't usually set services the same way that there is in Christian, Jewish, and even I believe Islamic traditions. So there's a lot of just come to the temple whenever you feel like it. Have your one-on-one time with those deities. But if you look on the temple websites, there's usually a calendar that will say, puja times, when they're getting the deities ready for the day, when they're kind of getting them ready for nighttime, so you can come at those times and be assured that something will be going on. I was going to the new temple when we moved almost 3 years ago, just about 3 years ago, to this area, and so I was exploring a new temple, and coincidentally we happened to move really close to a Hindu temple, which was delightful. But in Maryland there's a lot of them, so we're very lucky that way. I started going in the mornings because I'm a stay-at-home mom, and there was nobody else there, just me and the Pandit, and so we would watch him doing his thing, because he does it whether somebody's there or not. He's doing it for the deities. But he was just so delighted that we were there, so when he was finished he would come over and chat with us and and of course give prasadam to the children, and he was so happy to see us there. But in the future, now that we're ready to do in-person stuff again, I would like to start going to some of the evening things in the hopes of meeting more of the community and not being the only one there. So yeah, the main thing is you just have to be brave. You gotta be bold and just go in there with confidence and be ready to accept learning, to be ready to say to people, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. I would love some guidance. Follow along, watch if there's other people there, what they're doing. Some things that are very common that you'll see is people will prostrate on the ground in front of the deities. They will probably walk around either the whole temple room or individual deities in a clockwise direction. If the priest has been doing an arti, he might be giving people tilak, might be putting kumkum on foreheads, and you can stand in line and do that. They may hand you a piece of fruit, which is prasadam, so it's kind of like communion, sort of. It's like blessed food. The god has blessed this food. When you eat it, you're taking in those blessings, but it's for anyone. So, you know, if there's a line forming for anything, get in line, watch what the people ahead of you are doing, and then do the same thing. You know, you might do this, they might pour some liquid into your hand for you to, you'll just watch what other people are doing. But yeah, it's okay. You are welcomed there. They are happy to see you. They're happy to have people exploring Hinduism, getting to know Hinduism. Even if you make a mistake, they will see that your intention is so pure and humble and, you know, coming from wanting to learn. So I don't think anybody's going to be offended. I will tell you about one negative experience that I had with a Hindu temple, and this was in India. And this is a rumor that you might hear, and it is true in occasional times. There are so many temples in India, obviously. So you're bound to hit across one or two that might not be that nice. So the second time that I visited India, I was there with a family friend named Sundar. He is such a nice man. He is so delightful. And he brought a whole group of us, mostly white people, mostly people from, in fact, I think entirely people from the cult that I grew up in. So we had, you know, I'm one of the few from that cult that now identifies fully as Hindu, but I think more and more people are kind of seeing what I'm doing and realizing that they too can come to that philosophy in a more authentic way than what we had been taught. But anyway, so big group of white people who have varying degrees of familiarity with Hinduism, but anyway, that's not really important. We traveled around in the south, and I think that this is something that happens in the south a bit more often because North India is a much more popular destination for tourism. You've got the Taj Mahal is in the north, the Red Fort, a lot of Buddhist sites. I think Kurukshetra and the Mahabharata sites are a little farther north. Vrindavan is a little farther north. There's so many famous sites to go to in the north, so it's a bit more ready and expecting tourists. The south does not see very much of that, and so it can be a little bit more confusing for them for what to do. But there's also not as much of like a people trying to take advantage of tourist trade either, so yeah. There was some, man, I'll tell that story too. So one of the temples that we went to, of the many, many, many that we visited, Sundar starts getting into a fight with this guy at the entrance, and we have no idea what's going on. They're shouting at each other in Tamil. I know a fair bit of Hindi by this point, but I don't know Tamil at all. So of course, like, yeah, super well prepared for traveling in the south. Ugh. Anyway, I would love to learn Tamil someday, but I'm going to finish getting fluent in Hindi someday. It's been like 15 years. Anyway, so they're shouting at each other. He comes back, he says he's asking for money. He's saying, you know, he basically was saying in Tamil to Sundar, let me take advantage of these white people and charge them money to come into the temple. Why are you not letting me do that? And Sundar was so pissed. He was like, absolutely not. You are not taking advantage of my friends like this. So they're going to tell you, the guise is like, oh, you're white, therefore you're not Hindu, therefore you can't come into the temple. And that is, I think, probably always a case of trying to extort money from gullible people, tourists. I mean, there's always some bad apples around, as we know, and I think there's a perception that white tourists are always well off, they're wealthy, so why not get them to give you a little extra money? But because it's like, you hear the excuse and you think, oh, okay, that's valid. They think I'm not Hindu, so they don't want me to come in, and okay. But that's not what it is at all, because if you pay the bribe, they'll let you in. So it's not like a moral high ground issue at all. So anyway, it's rare. It does happen sometimes, and that's on them. That's not you. Don't worry about it. If I remember, I don't think we ended up going into that temple at all. Remember, we went to so many. It was great, and I especially loved, we were in Chennai, and I want to say, was it the Ramakrishna Center that was there? There was a meditation center that was just so beautiful, and I had the best meditation experience of my life there. And of course, every time we go to Sringeri. You can see the picture of the guru kind of vaguely in the background there, Sri Bharati Tirtha. We always go and have darshan with him. He is our guiding star, our holy man, our guru. But, and I was also going to tell you the story of, we went to a touristy place in South India, but a lot of the touristy places in South India are tourist spots for Indians. So still not a whole lot of non-Indians around. And there were some very pushy vendors, as there often are, people getting in your face like, you want this, you want this, you want this. So this young man was trying to convince me to buy a legit beautiful wood-carved kind of, it looked like blinds of a window, and it had a separate image on each one of Krishna, and the painting was phenomenal. It was gorgeous, but I'm like, no, I don't want to purchase this. I don't want to purchase from somebody super pushy. So he keeps on following me around trying to convince me. And one of the ways that he tried to convince me was by showing me that each of these slats actually turns over, and on the other side are naked images of people having sex. Painted, naked porn, basically. And like, you think that's gonna convince me to buy this? Ew! So, yeah, that was interesting. But all in all, I've had a phenomenal experience whenever I've gone to India, and I've loved it there. It's been a surprise to everyone, because I do have what they used to call Asperger's. They don't call it that anymore, but I have some pretty serious sensory processing problems. So sensory input is extremely intense for me, more so than for the average person. So people were a little bit nervous about, like, you're gonna go to India where there's like crowds and noise and lights and just so much going on. Like, that can often cause me to go into a meltdown, which is basically a lot like a panic attack. But that didn't happen at all. I loved every second in India. I felt at home there. I felt comfortable there. I embraced it all. So, highly recommend if you have the chance to do that once this horrible situation with the pandemic is over. Yeah, I got way off track there. But the point is, going to temples is a little bit scary, but toughen up and go in there and do it until you get used to it. You can do it. And some of this advice is present in my book. I have a short ebook available about how to get started practicing as a Hindu, and the link for that is in the description along with the table of contents, more information about it. All right, see you next time.